Do you know what the key difference is between us and every other creature on this planet? What makes us beyond all that is around us? It isn't that we can solve problems. No. A computer can solve problems with rather good ease. Nor that we have rules or a structure. Many animals have that. Not even our brains, for one could map them out physically and set to work replicating how they function. And we cannot say that it is the existence of a soul. There are too many assumptions within that school of thought. The key difference between us and other creatures is this. We communicate ideas from ourselves to others. You see, animals communicate only for their survival and for maintaining their way of life. They never stop and discuss morality with one another. You would not see two bees debate whether they should be inhabiting the hive or overthrowing their queen. And you wouldn't see worms cry out to birds that they too are living beings and deserve pity. Communication of ideas. That's what defines us as people. Even some of the most advanced artificial intelligence in the world have no concept of when they're saying something that is racist, merely that it is common behavior they have witnessed. They can only parrot ideas, never truly communicate them. Thinking on this, it must be said that as the capability for communication has increased, we have become more and more distinct as beings. We can read the translated works of many philosophers, take pictures that convey injustices of war and violence, write songs that carry on our thoughts about love, paint pictures and write stories that give insight into our ideas. The high rate of literacy and the internet have helped in this massively, especially when it comes to emergencies. In fact, at this very moment, I am utilizing this distinction myself. As you know, class, these lectures are recorded for future viewing. They will be watchable in the university systems for years to come and will be transcribed into some of your mother tongues. What I am telling you now, someone will read, someone will hear. My ideas. This is what defines us.
That's what one of my professors used to say. Professor Alexandra. She was a wonderful woman, and it's because of that speech that I saved the world. It all started with the village. The village, if you don't know, is a small area hidden off the coast among the trees and hills. You could never see it from above, and by the time that news of its existence had started filtering into the scientific community, many scientists were already moving into it. It was, as far as we could tell at the time, a place in which scientists were able to have all the latest technology and resources at their disposal. How it managed to make this work, we didn't know. Heck, we weren't even sure entirely who started it. No government would ever own up to it. And if it was a privately funded venture, it was odd that there was no distinct focus for the scientists to be set upon. One of my friends, Dr. Grant, or Carrie as I knew her, yes, I know her parents had quite the sense of humour. Their other kid was called Ed. Sorry, where was I? Yes, Carrie. She ended up in the village. I had no idea that it was happening until she sent me a text stating that she had been invited for a visit. Rather impressive, to be honest. There were a lot of universities and organisations lining up at her door with substantial amount of funding. Though we had both intensely studied psychology under Professor Alexandra, we had parted ways and ended up in the employ of very different companies. That doesn't matter much to you, I imagine, but it is worth stating so in my opinion. Carrie, she had the pick of the world for her work, and yet after going to the village, she phoned me to explain that after examining the facilities and equipment, she had accepted a position there and would be promptly heading out. But there was something off about the phone call. Carrie and I had been friends for a few years by this point, and we were rather comfortable with each other. Admittedly, she was perhaps a bit blunter and more direct than me, but we were always open with each other. But she seemed a little evasive. I gave it little consideration then. After all, when you get a job of that scale, sometimes you can be wary of what to say or what not to say before you're settled in and you know where the lines are. It continued on though. In future calls and texts, she would speak about the oddest and most minuscule things like how the weather had been, but never about her work, not even the slightest glimmer. I did entertain the possibility that she could have been under an NDA, but even then, Carrie would at least offer up a few strands of thought that she had in mind. But she didn't. Something had to have happened. As I continued my own work at the Northern Linguistics Institute, more and more prominent scientists started leaving their jobs and going to the village for their work. I eventually decided to make a visit. Carrie wasn't happy about this. She protested against it over the phone. She was insistent that I should stay away, that I'd be a nuisance, and then she said that she wished never to see me again, and she hung up. This was just 4 months after she'd taken the job in the village. And I know people well. I know that nobody changes that rapidly in how they speak to a longtime friend unless there's some dramatic change. So I kept searching for the village, spoke to people, friends of those who'd gone. It took another 2 months, but eventually I discovered where exactly by the coast that it lay, tucked away with all those mines within. I took a train south and then an Uber for most of the rest of the journey. That's where things got really odd though. The Uber driver wouldn't go the full way. He insisted that
I'll only go as far as the outskirts of town, mind. The last 5 miles. Well, nobody does that. None of us do. Don't you worry though, there's a bus that takes people from there on. That'll get you there, where you want to go, in the end.
And so he took me to the outskirts, left me there, and not more than 2 or 3 minutes later, a bus trundled up to me, small and rusty. It stopped. The driver opened the door and let me enter. I asked him about the fare, but he merely tapped a sign above his head that said, "Do not distract the bus driver with conversation." And though I did start to object, he merely closed the door and sped the bus through the trees and rugged remain of old roads toward the village.